And welcome back to the Pride London Network. My name is Stephen D'Amelio, Vice President of Pride London Festival, and I'm honored and thrilled to be sitting down and talking with the Executive Director of Pride Toronto, to be having a conversation not just about Pride Toronto and not just about the new Executive Director, but specifically about Black History Month and what it means to the Executive Director. So, everyone, please help me welcome the Executive Director for Pride Toronto, Sherwin Modeste. Sherwin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. And you?
I am doing well. I think both of us are just very busy, for sure, getting prepared for this year's in-person festival, which I heard, of course, you are also going back to.
Yes.
So congratulations, that's amazing.
Yes, thank you, and you too.
Now, I just for our viewers, if you wouldn't mind just quickly clarifying your pronouns.
So my pronouns are he and him.
Thank you. So again, you are the Executive Director for Pride Toronto. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I was born and raised my elementary and high school in Grenada, that's in the Caribbean. Moved to Toronto when I was 17. And as any typical, I would not say typical, but as a West Indian, very religious family, you know, I got married at a very young age, although I knew that I was gay from a very young age, but I felt, you know, I had to do the thing that our family, you know, what society expected. But eventually I did, you know, I am where I am today because of the support of a lot of community members and just really wanting to live my authentic self, be true to myself and to the people that I love a lot. So I've been around the block, and yes.
If you don't mind me asking, how, as you mentioned, it was a slight one, religious upbringing, and coming from the West Indies. How did your family react to you coming out?
You know, the good thing is that most of my family said they knew. So my family were not surprised. And I also have to say they've been very supportive in most cases. Yes, there are still individuals that have that resistance and continue to sort of shun me and shun the community. But I think on a whole, I have to say the family and the people that I care about the most have been very accepting and welcoming of me and, you know, my true and authentic self into the family.
That's really nice to hear. I think a lot of people who might be listening might have experienced this as well, you know, coming from another country and a different upbringing. It's really good to hear that your family was able to love you for who you are.
Yes,
And I
yes,
think
definitely.
as you express that, sometimes that does mean that there are family members or friends even that may not accept that, but that's their loss as
Exactly, exactly.
exactly. So,
Yes.
you had mentioned that when you would come to Canada and you would come with your family, that you love them a lot, and your friends and your family were a huge part of your life. I'm wondering, in your positioning now, um, who are your three big influences when it comes to leadership in your life, and how you got to this position now?
So I have to say, I have had some amazing, amazing femtors, and namely Simone Atongo, um, who was my former CEO at Vibrant Healthcare Alliance, Kenny Jacobs, who was my director at Toronto Community Housing, and Angela Cook, who was my VP at Toronto Community Housing. These three strong, well-grounded Black women supported me in every way of life, both professionally and personally. And I honestly would not be the person that I am today without their support. And I've said to folks that, under Simone, for example, under Simone's leadership, I became a manager, I became a director, and she was my coach as executive director. So having these women and I say femtors in my life have just been phenomenal and has really helped me to be where I am today.
First of all, I love that terminology, femtors. I love that, and that's really important. I think that again, it might speak to a lot of individuals listening to this and watching, but strong Black women being a large part of your view on leadership is really important. And obviously, it's also extremely, as you said, extremely nourishing that they're grounded and that they, understand that that's important to you. So that's amazing, and it's also amazing that you still recognize that. How many years on, and you're still recognizing that those individuals had that much of an impact on you and what you're doing currently. So
Yes, yes.
hopefully they're doing well, they're doing healthy, and they hear this as well. Um,
Yes, yes. In fact, two of them, one is a deputy minister out in BC now. One is an associate deputy minister here in Ontario, and one is an executive director. So again, as I said, they've given me some very big shoes to fill, but again, has just been there for me in every way possible. And I really appreciate them throughout.
Again, that is really good to hear, and I hope that as viewers and listeners are continuing to watch, that there are individuals in their lives that they can also reach out to and look up to, because again, representation and leadership certainly does matter as well. And speaking about powerful, grounded Black women who had an important role in your life, I'm wondering, what does Black History Month mean to you, and how do you celebrate it?
So I say to folks, Black History Month, it's something that I celebrate every day. And I've had the privilege of returning home. And when I say returning home, I'm referring to returning to the motherland as individuals that were stolen from one continent and brought to another continent. I spent the time to really understand, the history and understand the people of West Africa, and really took in, the culture. And I have to say that every morning that I wake up, I celebrate Black History Month. I celebrate African Heritage Month, because everything about me is a reflection of my culture. Everything about me is a reflection of my Blackness, my Africanness. And that for me, it is very important. When you see me, there is nothing to hide about my Blackness. You cannot first identify that I am gay. However, right away, you don't have to ask me if I am Black or African. So every morning, so there isn't a day that I don't celebrate. But I also believe it is very important that we educate and we provide opportunities to others to have that experience, of not just, enjoying the amazing food, but getting an opportunity to understand the culture, understand the history and the struggles of African people.
It's I think for example, when we speak about Black history, and I'm glad that you bring this up. I think when we speak about Black history, individuals who might be born in the United States or in Canada may view Black history as just the history localized. But I think that that's important, that, going back to the motherland, and going back to, the origins of why it's important to understand this history, why it's important to understand this education. And as you said, celebrate the food, the culture, the music, but it is important that there's education there. So again, that's incredibly interesting to hear. And for individuals who are people of color, when, as you said, the first thing that people notice is not their sexual orientation or their identity, it is their skin tone.
Yes.
And so that is certainly something that I think a lot of individuals, myself and yourself included, it's a unique challenge, but it is also, I think, really interesting that we're able to work with one another to educate one another. So I think it's really important that you've touched on that. Now, you mentioned, as we were just talking, you mentioned that the first thing that people see is, as you were saying, is not your orientation or even your likes. It's your skin tone. And I'm curious, being an executive director and working in the non-for-profit sector, how have you found navigating the non-for-profit world as a gay Black man?
And it has always been a struggle. So prior to joining Pride Toronto, I was the director of community development at a community health center. And when a lot of folks come into the office, they would walk into the office and you could see that shock on their face. It's like, okay, I'm here to see the director. Oh, welcome, and we'll start the conversation. And this exact same thing happens at Pride Toronto, where you have individuals on, their expectations are like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. And my last name also does not do justice, because the last name, it is very, I've had some folks that said, oh, I thought you were French, your last name. And, indirectly trying to tell me, like, they were not sure, they're actually surprised that I'm Black. I've had folks said to me that, how is it being a Black person, as the executive director at Pride Toronto? But I've also had folks say to me, we're here for you. And oftentimes I ask myself the question, you being here for me, is that because of the color of my skin? Or would you have said the exact same thing to a non-racialized person? So many times there are a lot of questions that sort of, after conversations, that I asked myself, was this because of my skin color, or was this very genuine? But it's definitely been, I've had my struggles of, really having to educate and help folks to unpack that, even within the community, that we're we're here, and we're here to stay, that it is not, and it goes beyond being the executive director. I mean, I've had folks that said to me that, as a racialized person, I do not feel welcome in a lot of 2S LGBTQ space. And that for me is concerning.
It's, as you're touching on individuals, racialized individuals not feeling comfortable in, and this isn't just a Pride Toronto thing. This has become a pretty national situation. So I think that as you touched on it, it is certainly important that the various Pride organizations do recognize that, and do, as you say, do try to clarify and actually engage in these various communities and have representation. I think that also is really important, both on the board and off the board. So as you say, and as you talk about some of these unique challenges and some of these unique questions that come up, you had mentioned that, for example, that you were working with another organization and just recently got brought in to Pride Toronto as executive director. Now, obviously, this past year has been very different, very challenging for a lot of organizations, non-for-profit or Pride organizations across the board as well. I'm wondering, how did you find that? How did you navigate through the COVID reality and trying to ensure that you yourself kept your sanity and were able to continue to keep going?
Yeah, no. So for me, self-care for myself and for my team is very important. So it's something that I really sort of promote within the organization. But navigating COVID was not too difficult for me, primarily coming from healthcare. So I came from healthcare where, I dealt with COVID 24/7. And for me, I really wanted, even with a virtual Pride, I wanted to make sure that folks see themselves in Pride. So really started having conversations with the program team about making sure that that diversity is truly represented, and it's represented in an authentic way. But I have to say, one of my greatest accomplishment in 2021 Pride month was we sort of invented what we call it now Community Connect. And again, for the past 40 years, everybody was coming to Pride. And what we did, we went to Pride. So we went into the Jane and Finch. We went into Scarborough. We went into East York and North York. And the reception was just fantastic. Folks were just so happy, and they were like, finally, Pride moved out of downtown Toronto and they're in Scarborough, in Malvern. And for me, that was great. And again, just really sending that message that queer folks don't just live downtown. Queer folks also live in the suburbs, and they need to see that representation. And having politicians and the whole works come out and lend their support for us was really, really fantastic. So I think for me, in even with COVID, we were able to find a unique way to connect with community to ensure that folks throughout the city of Toronto saw themselves represented in Pride.
First of all, I think that the idea of Toronto is a really large city for individuals that may not be aware. So I think that the fact that you're identifying that, it's not just the core that is interested in celebrating or being educated in the diversity that is the community, but it is also the suburbs and some of the other areas outside of the core of downtown Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. And you touched on representation, which was the reason why you made some of these moves and some of these ideas, is to try to identify two individuals within these communities in Scarborough and York, say, hey, we are here and you are a part of this community as well. I'm wondering, Does representation matter and you kind of touched on this a little bit, does it matter on the board and in politics? Or is it not that important anymore?
Oh, have mercy. It is more important. And the reason why I say to you, representation on boards and representation at all level of, of government and politics, it is important primarily because that's where some key decisions are made. Key decisions are made at the boardroom table. And again, oftentimes decisions are made based on lived experience, based on knowledge, education, okay? And if you have, a boardroom table that is made up of 90% white male, they're going to be making decisions that are in the best interest of that group. And the exact same thing can be said for politics. And for me, it is so important. And where I give credit to our federal government, we now have, I think it's 3 or 4 cabinet ministers that identify as where, but they're all white male. Okay, none of them identify as trans. So that for me, it is really important that the community, that at all tables, that we are represented. But I also want to mention that we don't want to be at the table, but not allowed to dine. Oftentimes we would be invited, we're given a knife and fork to pretend that we're eating, but a dinner plate, a setting is not before us. And the servers will serve everyone and no food will be placed before us. And those token sit at the table have to stop. Because if we're gonna have a seat without a voice, it's not worth it. So for me, those things are really, really important. And I have to say, Pride Toronto has definitely done their part in reaching out to marginalized community. And the board is a majority BIPOC members, and for me, it speaks volume to where we should have been, but where we're going.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, first of all, Toronto is a melting pot of various cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds. So I think it's really important, as you say, that representation is on the board. And it's fantastic to hear that over the years, Pride Toronto has looked at trying to engage, specifically over the past few years, engaging these various communities and now having representation on that board. So I think all organizations, all Pride organizations could certainly start to look at that. And other organizations, non-for-profit organizations in general, I think are important as well. We've been talking with Sherwin, the executive director for Pride Toronto, and this is part of Black History Month. Again, I do want to take a quick moment to just mention that all of our programming on Pride London Network is made available for free. So if you would like to share this, you're more than welcome to. We will be right back after a short commercial break, again with our interview with Sherwin, the executive director of Pride Toronto.
Everyone, this is Lita Von Sleeves, mother of the House of Sleeves, and you're watching the Pride London Network.
Get sleazy. Get sleazy, sleazy, sleazy.
and welcome back to the Pride London Network special presentation of Black History Month. Once again, my name is Stephen D'Amelio, Vice President of Pride London Festival, and I am joined by the Executive Director of Pride Toronto, Sherwin Modeste. Thank you once again, Sherwin, as we were talking about representation and how it has changed over the years, specifically in Pride Toronto. I'm wondering, as your experience in both with Pride Toronto and just as a member of the community, I'm curious what cause or event or even policies relating to the relations you found within the community that has kind of piqued your interest and kept you going in recent years.
Oh, so prior to 2019, my interest in Pride was the celebration. I was not a member of Pride Toronto. I was not active. I would always be at the festival. But for some reason, I've always had a very special interest in the trans rally. Because what I felt there was some realness within the rally, that there was that level of celebration, but there was also that activism that kept coming up. And in 2019, I was in New York for World Pride. And I visited the Stonewall and read and took the time to really take in the history of the Stonewall and heard firsthand the experience of some of these trans women, predominantly trans women of color. And believe it or not, I left New York with all of the energy and that fight to come back to Toronto and want to get involved in Pride, because I do not want Stonewall and that riot, that fight, that first Pride to get lost in everything that we do. And my intentions were to get on the board or to start volunteering. And here I am today. So I will have to say to you, a big piece of my passion lies with making sure that we celebrate the gains that we have made, but at the same time, really, continuing the fight. And, I was sharing with some friends this week that there is over 69 countries in the world where it is still illegal to love somebody of the same gender. And for me, so that means the fight have not yet been won. So this is why I do what I do.
And it's first of all, it's really important that individuals have a chance to be educated on the history of our communities and the fight for equal rights, and as it continues, frankly, not just around the world, but also here in Canada, as we've been seeing over the past few years as well. So it's really interesting that you had a chance to go down to New York and actually visit the Stonewall and see some of these messages. I do think, as you mentioned, that there's a lot of impact when we're talking about racialized people, from the 1969 riots to all the way to today. It seems to have a massive impact on racialized individuals who also seem to be at the forefront, not all the time, but do seem to be at the forefront of these movements. I am curious, as we speak about racialized people and the relationships that Pride Toronto has cultivated within the communities. What has that relationship been like for you personally as the executive director over the years, even just as a community member, with the Black community and the LGBTQIA community as well?
Yeah, so again, and I've always, that eager and that fight for the Black community has always been there. At a very young age, I was elected as the National Diversity Vice President of CUPE, one of Canada's largest public sector union, representing workers of color. So at 19, I was up against, and having to represent workers of color from across the country and speak on their behalf. But again, being part of and seeing, what the struggles that we as racialized folks, especially Black folks, because let us not lose focus on the high level of anti-Black racism that exists. And that undertone of we're sort of so much less than other racialized folks. It's something that I see and I study and I breathe and every day of my life. So that work I know is needed. That work will always be part of who we are. And Pride is not, immune to that kind of work. And I think it's really important that we recognize that many folks did not see themselves in Pride. So when, 2022 on Friday, and Pride Toronto headliner will be a Jamaican dance hall artist. This is sending a message, and we're doing this deliberately to let folks know that the 2S LGBTQ community is very diverse. We're also sending messages to countries where we're not recognized or we're not given the same respect as others in terms of who we love, that we're here and we're here to stay. So again, we're being, in some cases, we've been very in your face, and in some areas, we've been very creative on how we send a message that the issues in relation to race and anti-Black racism is very present in our society, and we will continue to work towards addressing those.
I think that it is important, as you mentioned, it's important that, not as we said, representation matters both on the political realm and on boards, but it also matters, quite frankly, as you said, on the stages, that there's presentations being put on and entertainment. So I think that's really interesting to hear that you're saying, both in your face and behind the scenes, that we're taking the time to be creative and indicate to the community that, you are part of our community, and there are individuals who represent you as well, and you could strive for that as well. So yes. That's great. And that's great to hear that that's where you'd like to see it go, is continue to build upon that. You mentioned that 2021 was, as a lot of people experienced, a unique year. But there were a lot of unique things that you were able to put together and pull off, including going into various communities and various other areas of Toronto. I am wondering, obviously, there were some positives, but there were also some negatives that came out of COVID, and how it was challenging for some organizations. I'm curious, when it came to these restrictions that were put into place, and some of them moved and some of them changed over the course of the few months, how did that affect your ability to continue on with these efforts? And did you find that some of these restrictions were more hurtful than helpful for your organization, or a lot of the changes that you were making were actually able to adapt with what was happening?
And I have to say that again, and kudos to the team that I work with, an amazing staff team that were ready and willing to adapt to whatever came our way. And we actually had, believe it or not, 3 festivals planned. We had a physical, we had a phygital, and we had a full digital. So we ended up with sort of what we were referred to as a phygital. So it had a little bit of both, less of the physical and more of the digital. But I have to say the staff team were just amazing, and also the amazing artists. that we worked with, because again, getting 200 plus artists to pre-record and send their content to us, all of the collectives were on board. And, definitely there were individuals that for technological reason would have loved to be in person, and we miss out on that. That's definitely has been one of our struggles, but I have to say, we were able to adapt very well and very fast, not just in 2021, also in 2020, because, again, prior to me, the staff team were able to pull off a full digital festival within a couple months after the restrictions were put in place.
Yeah, I have to applaud Pride Toronto. I happen to take notice of, as you said, the three different types of festivals that you're putting on and putting together for the communities in Toronto. I am curious, what will be sticking around? Will any of the digital content kind of continue for Pride Toronto, or are there plans in the works for some more digital content?
Yes, so I guess you're getting it directly from the horse's mouth. Yes, so we're planning to keep some of the digital because we know that not everyone will be ready to come out. But also one of the things that we also found through the online platform is that many of our siblings that are not able to travel to Toronto were able to enjoy Pride for the first time, and this for us is very important. So we will be keeping segments of the festival digital. So there will be some components that will remain online.
And from my understanding, just as a side note, I understand that applications are still open in some areas for Pride Toronto. And again, Pride Toronto website, I believe pridetoronto.com, if I'm correct. And so, yes, that's really good to hear that there is still an ability for individuals who might not live in the GTA area to still participate in some format, and specifically individuals who don't live anywhere in Canada, frankly, to also have a chance to participate and be a viewer of the entire festival. So that's really, really good to hear.
Yes, definitely.
I am curious, as you said, your experience has been both as a community member and festival goer, as well as now as executive director. What has been a moment for you that has stood out, either as executive director or just as a festival goer, that really stood out in your mind for a performance or a speak or anything that was really a standout moment to you for Pride Toronto events?
I have to say that some of my most memorable moments at Pride have been the speeches at the trans rally. Leading out that trans rally, as you know, Pride Toronto holds one of the largest trans rally in the world. And we have the Guinness World Record to prove that. And some of the speeches there, and I remember 2018 being there and listening to a trans male, and I was just blown away, just talking about their own upbringing and their own transition. And those moments for me, I always cherish and will always have a place in my heart to know, that, finally, and just hearing how they're able to sort of be truly identify how they, not just how they feel, that it's those moments are always, would be always be present in my head.
It's interesting that you mentioned hearing speeches from trans men and even trans women that really hit home for you and are memorable and emotional. I have to admit that last year for Trans Day of Remembrance, I also participated, our board participated in an event that was held by a local organization here. And I agree. When you hear those stories, and for individuals, it might not necessarily be trans men or women, but it really does hit home when you hear it from another individual.
Yes.
And you're hearing their, it's their struggles, it's their perspective, it's their authentic life.
Mhm.
And you may not have had that experience or had that talk or even heard those words coming out in that way. So it really does. I certainly understand that it really does hit, the feels, and get you to really understand that everyone has unique struggles and challenges, and they just want to live their best and authentic life they can. So
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
glad to hear that, that continues to be an important movement for you, and you continue to see the positives in hearing speeches like this. Now, I do want to touch on some of the more positive and celebratory things that Pride Toronto's got coming up. I know, obviously, some things haven't yet quite been announced. We're still working away on getting some of the bigger announcements out. But I am curious, what can people expect from Pride Toronto this year?
So I would say that we're going to have a lineup of artists that will be second to none. And the unique thing again of Pride Toronto, 95% of our events are free. All our events on the weekends are free. So it's going to give an opportunity to really highlight some amazing, amazing talent, local talent. So I think that lineup is just going to be phenomenal. I think we've also taken a very bold step. And this year, for the first year, we're really going to be addressing environmental sustainability. So all the vehicles will be green vehicles on the parade route for the first time. We're also moving from floats that were 20 feet to 14. Again, and really wanting to balance the protest with the celebration. Okay, so for me, those two pieces are going to be really, really important. But again, it is going to be the first in-person celebration. We're so happy that many of the restrictions are being moved. We're very happy that almost all of our curators and collectives are back on board and have already started planning. So our headliners, as we've already announced a few of them, and there is more to come. And definitely this is going to be a year of celebration, and again, as we say, it's not just for Toronto. No matter where you are in the province, please take the time, come down, and celebrate with us, because it's going to be amazing.
And speaking about coming and celebrating in Toronto, even if you're not from Toronto, other organizations, other Pride organizations are also found at Pride Toronto, can also be seen at Pride Toronto, talking and meeting with various individuals. So, I certainly would recommend, even if you're not an organization that represents a Pride, if you're non-for-profit or even for-profit, and you would like to have your voice or your yourself be present and be part of that educational and celebratory and protest, please do reach out. I think it's really important. And as I agree, this year is the first year back, and we are all very excited. So I cannot wait to be back in person and to see everything that Pride Toronto has to offer.
Yes, and definitely. And again, I have to give a shout out to our sponsors who have been with us and really stuck with us. Sponsors and some of our donors at all three levels of government have just been there with us. So definitely that's amazing. But I also have to say, I will not miss the opportunity to put in the plug for Global Black Pride. The first in-person Global Black Pride, Global Black Village of queer individuals will be in Toronto the long weekend in August. So again, folks need to mark their calendars for this amazing event where our siblings, our Black siblings from Europe, Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, we all are going to be descending in Toronto to talk about our rights and also to celebrate. So again, stay tuned for more information on that.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. So again, is that the first Global Black Pride that'll be held in Toronto?
It's the first in person. There have been two Global Black Prides, but they've both been virtual. And it all came out of the pandemic, realizing that our siblings in the South, in Africa, wanted a place where we can connect. And so again, this is the first in person, and we're looking forward.
That's amazing. So once again, that'll be the August long weekend, and we cannot wait to hear the details and see the details of this. So it's really good. And I have to ask, as just to clarify, how did that even come about? You said that this was just trying to, reach various different areas of our world, frankly. But you said this took place during the pandemic. What actually got you to think that this was something that was necessary?
So this started with a group of queer Black individuals from Canada, the US, Europe, the Caribbean, and Africa, really wanted to create that platform because, for many of our siblings that were not able to travel during the pandemic, who would seize the opportunity to get away, book their vacation, join some kind of pride to be able to come and celebrate. They missed out on all of that for 2 years. So we felt it was necessary to at least create a virtual platform where they can share. And once we realized, okay, things are starting to shift, we realized this is an opportunity. Let us make this an annual event and let us start having the in-person. And as executive director from Pride Toronto and as a Torontonian, I'm proud to say that, as Toronto being one of the most diverse cities in North America, I am truly honored to be, part of the host city for this event.
I also have to say I reside in London, Ontario, and I've had my home as London, Ontario for a number of years now. But I'm originally from Toronto, so I do have to say that I'm incredibly touched and I'm a little taken back, to be honest, that this is happening. I think it's really, really good. So I applaud you, your team, and the entire individuals, all the individuals that have helped to put that together and are looking towards making this an ongoing annual event on an annual basis. So thank you for that. That really is impressive, and thank the team for that.
Yes, definitely.
Now, as we do wrap up our interview, I do have just one more, I think, very important question for individuals who watch this and might be thinking about getting involved in their non-for-profit, whether it's a Pride organization, another organization that's non-for-profit, or just an organization that they may be wanting to start themselves. What would be your advice for individuals who are interested in getting into working for the community on a volunteer basis, specifically for non-for-profits and for prides?
No, definitely. Again, it's something that is very important in terms of giving back to our community. So even as executive director, I still make time to sit on boards, to do my volunteer work. And I say to folks all the time, find something that you're passionate about. Find something that brings you joy. Identify that organization, whether it's a shelter, whether it's a youth, children, seniors, animals, whatever it is that brings you joy. Identify that, find that organization. Not-for-profits are always looking for extra hands and feet and minds to be able to make things happen. And you would realize how important your service is, not just to that organization, but by rippling effect, your entire community. Because that whole concept of it takes that village. In Africa, we say it takes a village to raise a child. And that village is all of us coming together to really put in the different parts. And it's really important. It's something that I have done all of my adult life. And I strongly, strongly encourage, again, not everyone is meant to be on a board, but again, you can use your skills and your talent and your ability in so many ways to support not-for-profits and to support community.
I 100% echo those sentiments. I really appreciate you mentioning that. And I think it's important that individuals, as you said, recognize that they may not be necessarily appropriate for a board itself, but these boards are really interested in having individuals volunteer for them, even be liaisons for communities that the boards may not have access to or may be struggling with. So you're right, find a passion and you'll definitely continue to do the best that you can. Sherwin, this has been very, very eye-opening and very revealing, I think, for a lot of individuals that might not have, as you said, expected to hear some of the things that you've said, and also to get a better understanding of your own experience as a racialized individual and growing up in Toronto and now as the executive director. I do have to say, obviously, for our viewers, please, please, please be well aware that all of the events that are taking place for both Pride Toronto and Pride London, all restrictions are going to be followed appropriately. Pride Toronto, as well as our organization, will be in alignment with the City of Toronto's public health recommendations for Pride Toronto, so just keep that in mind. But I am excited. I am very, very excited for the festival coming back. Yes. I understand that the entire programming will actually take place starting June 1st, so it's basically the whole month of June, but the actual festival will conclude between the 24th, 25th, and the 26th of 2022 this year. And so we're excited to see some of these more announcements that'll be taking place. And Global Black Pride will be taking place in August on the long weekend. More details. Will they, can people find more details on the Pride Toronto's website, or will there be a new website?
Yes, so you would be able to find details on Pride Toronto website, and also they can just do a quick search for Global Black Pride. And again, you know, a lot of information will be, if it's not fully populated yet, will be populated very shortly.
Fantastic. So again, please go to pridetoronto.com and you can learn more information about the organization. Get involved in the organization as well, again, as a volunteer, as a board member in the future, or just as a member. I can definitely tell you that membership is important to organizations like the Pride organizations, because that's how your voice continues to be heard, and frankly, how representation continues, as Sherwin was mentioning. So on behalf of Pride London Festival, and our sponsor, TD, who is also, of course, a major player for Pride Toronto, I do want to thank you, Sherwin. This has been, again, as I said, a really revealing and eye-opening and educational interview. So I really appreciate your time today. I also want to take a quick moment to say that your work that you've been doing in this past year, I think, is really important for people in Toronto to keep abreast on. Obviously, I believe your tenure continues until things may change for yourself, but I am extremely excited. And for individuals who do want to reach out to you directly, can they just go through the website and contact you through there?
Yes, definitely. And you're right. I will stick around. Definitely, I have my eyes on one of the hills. I'm not going to say which of the hills as yet, but definitely I'm around, and folks can reach out to me. It's Sherwin@pridetoronto.com. You know, very easy. And yes, but they can always, you know, find me on the website.
Perfect. Well, Sherwin, I hope to see you eventually at in certain positions, but for now, this has been extremely, as I said, educational, and I'm so glad that you are a part of Pride Toronto. As we've talked about, representation really does matter. So it's really good to see and hear your experience and your passion for helping the community that you're a part of. I do, again, want to thank all of our viewers for taking the time and watching this. And again, please share this video. We'd love for others across the world to be educated on Pride Toronto and the events that are happening for the organization. And of course, Global Black Pride as well, as we mentioned in August long weekend. Sherwin, thank you so much. Again,
thank you. No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And again, it's still February, so we will continue to celebrate Black History Month, not just in February, but throughout. So thank you very much for having me.
You're quite welcome. And again, on behalf of Pride London Festival, this has been the Pride London Network's special presentation of Black History Month with the Executive Director of Pride Toronto, Sherwin Modeste. Once again, thank you to TD, our sponsor for Pride London Network, and thank you to all of our partners and sponsors for Pride London Festival. Have yourself a fantastic evening and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.